way the museum is focused on saving history is essentially by reaching out to the community and finding out what objects and also what stories are still available for us to collect and that we can properly care for within the space that we have.
The Clark County Historical Museum is viewed, well, a little bit as an unknown. People come in and they're like, wow, I had no idea this was here. It's been, we have to say, well, it's been here since 1909. Maybe not as a museum, but this building has been here forever and people still don't know. And when they get here, I think that it is not a typical museum. I think that they are blown away by the way that the exhibits are set up, the way that the museum interacts with the community through History on Tap, through our speaker series, through our walks. I think that it's really different for a historical museum because it's not just about the objects, it's about the stories.
I think one of the biggest challenges is that people don't understand how important what they have is. Often we hear, I'm not a leader, or my family wasn't important, when the reality is everybody who's been here has a story to tell that is important to how we've gotten to this place and who we're going to be in the future.
You know, as we continue to move into the future as an institution, I think what we want to see, the institution grow into is to become a facilitator of the community story in a much broader sense, to understand and respect the fact that we're a museum and we have a building, but really break ourselves out into the community where we're working with different organizations, working with businesses, we're working with government entities to help them both save their story and understand the best ways to do that, and then also work with them to help communicate that and share the narratives that they have. And so we're really looking at beyond the walls of the museum while also respecting and honoring the fact that the building is an artifact in its own right and the objects we hold are very important and key to our mission.
Hello, and welcome to this month's speaker series, brought to you by our series sponsors, the Historic Preservation Commission of Clark County and Wager Audio. This month, we begin the first in a multi-part series, Pride, Conversations with Clark County's LGBTQ+ community. In today's conversation, we're talking to Stephen Herndon of Triple Point Vancouver. In September, we'll be joined by Michael McCutcheon from Vancouver, USA Pride. Our mission here at Clark County Historical Museum is to gather, save, and share the stories and memories of Clark County. The Society has been performing this mission for over 100 years, and here at the museum, we've been showing and sharing Clark County's history for over 50. The core ways we share Clark County stories is through programming, exhibits, and events like this one. This year, the museum is asking the question, how did our community get to this place and time, and where are we going? It's a question many of us have asked over the last year as we've witnessed the historic events from the global pandemic to the social, economic, and political changes that continue to affect the landscapes of our lives. This question is central to this year's theme, our community, past, present, and future, which has inspired the slate of speakers and topics for both the speaker series and History on Tap. Before I introduce tonight's program, I want to let you know a little bit about what's going on here at the museum. Wander Clark County, our summer walking tour program, continues. This Saturday, we're visiting Old City Cemetery, followed by our Women's History Tour, Her Story, on Saturday, July 31st. In August, we'll be celebrating main streets throughout the county, starting with Ridgefield on August 7th. History on Tap returns to the Kagan stage Thursday, August 19th with a look at Indigenous knowledge and technology and how it can help affect climate change with Dr. Samantha Chisholm Hatfield. The speaker series will be back August 5th for a look at marine racing in Clark County with Jim Morrison. Finally, all this month we have teamed up with 5 nonprofits to bring you Friday Night Flicks. Each Friday for the month of July, one nonprofit is hosting an outdoor movie at the Port of Ridgefield. This week, Ridgefield Main Street will be bringing Field of Dreams to the drive-in. It's a great way to start your weekend with some fun entertainment while supporting your local nonprofits. More information for Friday Night Flicks and all our programs this summer is available on our website, monthly newsletter, and social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you want to support us, there are 3 ways to get involved. Your time, by engaging with us online and attending our events. Your energy, by volunteering with us. We could always use an extra set of hands. Or invest by becoming a member, sponsoring our programs and exhibits, or donating. And now to tonight's show. Vancouver Triple Point is a program of the Children's Home Society. It's Clark County, Washington's safe haven support group and drop-in program for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, pansexual, queer, and questioning youth ages 11 to 17 years old. It's a place where LGBTQ youth can engage with supportive peers, but also get connected with straight and queer supportive adults, agencies, and communities to help remove isolation and barriers of discrimination. Our guest tonight, Stephen Herndon, is a group facilitator and program planner for Triple Point. Stephen provides community outreach and introduces Triple Point and Gender Blender to local middle school and high schools, as well as school clubs like the Gay Straight Alliance, or GSA. Stephen also travels to many agencies and schools, providing a presentation called Creating Safe Spaces for LGBTQ+ Clients and Families to assist community members in understanding LGBTQ terminology, pronouns, gender identities, sexual orientation, and best practices in working with LGBTQ+ individuals. In today's conversation, Stephen talks to us about Triple Point's mission, the challenges facing LGBTQ youth today, and what parents and allies can do to help support our youth. We want to again thank our season sponsors, the Historic Preservation Commission and Wager Audio, for all their support. And now, on to tonight's show. First, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you came to be in Clark County and what you do.
Okay. Let's see. So why don't I start with introductions? Hello, my name is Stephen Herndon. I use he, him, his pronouns. And I wear a few different hats in the community here of Vancouver, Washington. I came here about 14 years ago. My husband and I moved from Flagstaff, Arizona, and we landed in Vancouver. And I was looking for somewhere to put myself, somewhere to put my experiences. And I've always worked with young people. We have 6 kids ourselves and some grandkids. And so somehow, and it wasn't really planned, but I kind of came in through the back door of the Children's Home Society. And what I mean by that is I've never done social work before, but I ended up volunteering for this amazing LGBTQ, that's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and the Q can be queer questioning, group, Triple Point. And it's housed in Children's Home Society. The program is about 25 years old. And so while I was looking for a place that I could help where I could be, I began a volunteer role with the group. And since then, I've grown with the group, I've grown the group, helped grow the group. We do it all with a couple staff members and mainly volunteers, amazing volunteers in the community. And it's just this awesome place where young people can come and be supported. It's not a therapeutic group, although there's a lot of therapeutic aspects of it. But it's just this amazing place where young people can come be themselves and be surrounded by people who are supportive. And at that age, we serve youth 11 through 18, and especially our younger youth, just to be able to be themselves for a little bit, if that's all they can be themselves at Triple Point. And the reason I say that is because home environments are very different for these young people. Some have immense support at home, some have kind of good support, and others have absolutely no support. So to create this space where they can come into once a week or a few times a week is a really special thing in our community.
So when we're talking about our youth, and you and I just have discussed this a little bit off camera, what are some of the changes you've seen in the environment that they're dealing with today that maybe they weren't dealing with, that young people weren't necessarily dealing with in the past? Or how has that kind of changed over the years while you've been with Triple Point?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. It changes quickly and rapidly. For myself, I came out late in life. When I was growing up in the 60s, it was really difficult to identify as LGBTQ. Not really difficult, but it was, I don't want to say it's easier now because there's still a lot of challenges, but for myself, I went the route of I got married and I had children. And when I was 39 years old, I couldn't keep it any longer. I couldn't keep my secret, and that is that I was gay. So I went through a process of coming out to my wife and children. and it was really, really difficult. And so after that process, happy report on that though is my wife and kids, we're all very, very close today, but it was a difficult journey to do that. And my story is not uncommon at all. So that's where I placed myself, and that's where I entered in to be supportive of for young people to be themselves at a young age and not have shame for who they are. So that's really how I began this work. And then as far as what's changed is it's changing really, really quickly. In my tenure at Children's Home and working with young LGBTQ youth, I've seen a lot of positive changes. I've seen negative changes in some states. As we know, there's horrible anti-trans bills out for these young people in different states. But the changes are coming, and they're coming fast. I do a lot of work in our schools, and one thing that I like to share with our schools is that the youth are leading the way. I call them the generation. And they're really changing the way we look at gender, they're changing the way we look at sexual orientation and everything. And I think that one roadblock that we're having with working with young people is we're not quite prepared. And what I mean by that is terminology is changing so quickly. As you all know, pronouns, and there's a lot of pronouns that our youth are using now other than he, him, she, her. And so I think that the change comes from us not really understanding what they're moving through. It isn't that we don't want young people to be who they really are, it's just that we don't get it a lot of times, and that can be really difficult. A lot of it comes from our fears, and when I mean our, I mean like families raising, adults raising kids. It can be really challenging because they are moving at breakneck speed with gender. And we get to the point of we're not quite sure what they're talking about. And also with you know, a family mindset, there's the mindset of like, we want to keep our kids safe and we worry for them. And we also think of what other people think about, and it's just a normal process. But it's just a matter of changing quickly, and for us to really start understanding what our youth are moving through, and also how to support these young people as well in the meantime.
So, as we're talking about youth and the rapid changes, obviously we've all, in the last year and a half, struggled with COVID and kind of that and the drastic change to our lifestyles anyway from that. What have you seen with our youth as far as kind of how that struggle has been for them, or what some of the additional pressures they've been dealing with as we've kind of moved to lockdown and now kind of starting to try and move out of lockdown?
It's been really, really difficult, and I don't need to share that with you all. We all know it in our own individual ways. It's been difficult, but for the youth in particular, it's been really hard. And one of the things that's been the toughest is losing touch with a lot of these young people. To give you an example, in our groups, we meet in downtown Vancouver at the Children's Home Society, and we would have anywhere from 12 to 20 youth show up for each group. It took us a month to go virtual when pandemic started and lockdown happened. Within a month, we had virtual groups on Zoom going. It was really important for us to keep the consistency and the support going. But a lot of our young people didn't come. You know, it's hard because we can't really reach out. Some of the kids are not out with their families, so it's not like I could just make phone calls and say we have this great virtual support group going. So it was more of a word of mouth, and also with the schools being out, there was no way to promote these groups as well. So it's been really difficult, and I think the hardest part is some of our young people who don't have much family support, and just thinking of them being home with families that may not support them or support them a little bit, and them having to navigate this world basically alone while in their own dwelling. And so that's what we were hoping, that the virtual groups would really maintain a sense of connection for young people, and it did to an extent. But there's a lot of issues with virtual. A lot of kids don't like to go on camera, so one beautiful thing about our groups is if a youth wants to, they can leave their camera off and still attend group, because there's those feelings of anxiety. Another big challenge has been just like wondering how they're coping. Mental health agencies have been really busy with young people and adults, and I think my biggest worry was just that where are they finding support for each other. If they're not getting it from their families, there's no group that they're going to, they're basically stuck at home. And so that was one of the biggest points. Our attendance for groups went way down. And so hopefully we're going to be starting our groups up towards the end of the summer, and it'll be really interesting to see where these young people are at when they walk back into our lives, and how they fared through this, the whole pandemic and being stuck at home.
So, kind of bringing it more broader for community, one of the things that we're interested in is kind of the idea of how has our community changed, how has our community grown, and Clark County particularly, in the last 14 years, how have you seen the community change in its interactions or relations with the LGBT community?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm happy to share that there has been a lot of growth and a lot of momentum within the community, in our community. One thing I like to share out is that when I began Triple Point many years ago, it was sort of a quiet group upstairs in our building, and we didn't really talk about it a lot. It was just this really cool support group that was going. And since then, it's kind of come out of the shadows. It's become a program at the Children's Home Society, a really important piece of the work that we do working with young queer kids. And so I think that other avenues of growth have been different groups that have started in town. There's a lot of resources right now for LGBTQ plus youth and adults, but more youth driven. There's the Queer Youth Resource Center, which I'm a part of, and that is Quirk. And that's a really good venue for young people. What we do with Quirk is we go out into various communities such as Washougal, Battleground, Camas, and we throw events. And what an event may look like is a DJ, food and snacks, and most importantly, just a place to come and have these kids center and have a good evening. I've had many youth at these various events come up to me and tell me it's the first time that they've really been around other LGBTQ plus youth, and so it's really special that way. There's a Rainbow Coalition that has started in town. There's some good work going on up in Longview right now. And other than that, there's momentum that I've never seen in the community. It's sort of like Portland has always sort of been the hub, and we've had to send folks over to the Q Center, folks and kids over to the Q Center to get support. But that's no longer really necessary because there's quite a few things going on in Vancouver. And right now what we're doing is there's some leaders in the community that are working on how do we centralize all of this information, because it can be really difficult to navigate finding things and finding therapists and counselors for youth. And there's some really good resources moving right now in the community. It's only growing. And so, yeah, there's it's come a long way. There's still a long way to go, but there's definitely more resources now than there were even 5 years ago.
So really, I guess my last question is more of a if you could put anything out there to kind of the Clark County populace about this issue or this community, what would you like to kind of put out there for them to know or understand?
That's a really good question. I think simplistically it would be we don't have to know everything, but it's good to have a sense of knowledge, especially if we're a family raising an LGBTQ plus youth or have a family member. Some base knowledge is really helpful for us. Terminology is moving really fast right now. And so a lot of, I get phone calls from family members, and they're looking for support for their youth, and that's a really beautiful thing. At the same time, there's a lot of misunderstanding. One thing that I really want to share is that young people, sometimes we need to give them a little bit more room to have adventures, to discover themselves, and it can be really difficult as a family member. We may worry about our young people, but the reality of it is kids need time to explore, and I would love to just share that let's let our kids explore who they are. Life is an exploration anyway. When we shut a kid down or shut a youth down for being LGBTQ, there's a lot of detriment in that. The suicide rate, especially for young trans kids, is enormous. And so I guess what I would share out is that it's okay. Let's let our young people explore who they are. They're changing the world anyway. And if we get in the way, we're just causing trauma, and let them be them.
So I want to thank you so much for sitting with us and having this conversation. And I hope that we can get you in again to talk a little more about what's going on and work a little bit with trying to get the story out for Triple Point and for your youth.
I would love that. I would love that. And thank you so much for allowing me to share a little bit.